The rain drummed against my office window as I stared at the lines of code on my screen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. 3 months into my job at Meridian Tech, and I still felt like an outsider. The Seattle tech scene was competitive enough without being the new senior developer on a team that had worked together for years. "Hey, Laura, we're heading to Murphy's. You coming?" Tara poked her head into my cubicle, her bright smile a stark contrast to the gray day outside. "Thanks, but I should finish this authentication module before tomorrow." I gestured toward my screen, offering what I hoped was a convincing smile. "Come on, it's Friday," she pressed, but I could tell her invitation was merely polite. The rest of the team was already gathered by the elevator, laughing at something Marcus had said. Marcus Wilson, our project lead, and the reason I both loved and hated coming to work. "Next time," I promised, though we both knew it was unlikely. After Tara left, I leaned back in my chair and sighed. At 32, I thought I'd outgrown workplace drama, but something about Marcus triggered all my insecurities. He'd barely acknowledged my existence since I joined the team, despite my decade of experience in systems architecture. When I spoke in meetings, he'd immediately move on to the next topic, or worse, restate my ideas as if they were his own. Classic tech bro behavior, but it stung every time. I stayed late that night, diving into the back-end code of our financial platform. That's when I discovered it. A hidden repository with a complex encryption algorithm unlike anything I'd seen in our main codebase. It wasn't documented anywhere, but based on the timestamps, it had been created by the company's founder before Meridian grew into what it was today. Curiosity got the better of me, and I spent the next few hours analyzing it. The code was elegant, almost beautiful in its complexity, handling a proprietary verification system that appeared to be fundamental to our platform's security. I made notes, created a diagram of how it integrated with our main systems, and saved everything to my personal drive. Not to steal company property, but because I found it fascinating, a puzzle worth understanding. The following Monday, I arrived early, hoping to ask our senior architect about the repository. But as soon as I reached my desk, an emergency alert lit up everyone's screens. Our main client portal was down, and users were reporting authentication failures across the platform. Marcus stormed into the office 20 minutes later, his normally perfect hair disheveled and his expression thunderous. He gathered the team in the conference room, pointedly avoiding eye contact with me. The system crashed at 4 a.m. "We've got thousands of users locked out and the backup restoration failed," he announced, pacing the length of the table. "The error logs point to an authentication failure in the core security module." My pulse quickened. That was exactly where the hidden repository integrated. "What about the legacy verification system?" asked Damon, one of the senior devs. Marcus ran a hand through his hair. "That's the problem. None of us have access to it. It was written by Caldwell before he left, and apparently, it's not in our main documentation." I cleared my throat. "I think I might be able to help." Every head turned toward me. Marcus finally looked at me directly, his expression shifting from annoyance to something I couldn't quite read. "What do you mean?" he asked, his tone flat. "I found a repository last week while I was working on the authentication module. It seems to be a proprietary verification system that integrates with our core security." I pulled up my notes on my laptop. I mapped out how it works. The room fell silent. Marcus stared at me, and for once, he wasn't quick to dismiss my words. Instead, he walked around the table and stood behind me looking at my screen. "How did you find this?" His voice was low, close to my ear. "I was tracing the call stack for the user authentication flow and noticed some unusual patterns," I explained, trying to ignore how close he was standing. "The system makes calls to functions that weren't in our main codebase, so I dug deeper." For the next hour, I walked the team through what I'd discovered. As I spoke, I felt a shift in the room. The looks of surprise and respect from my colleagues were new. But what caught me off guard was how Marcus was watching me, like he was seeing me for the first time. By afternoon, we had isolated the issue and were working on a fix. I found myself paired with Marcus, our workstations pushed together as we rewrote sections of the verification system. He was different. engaged, respectful, even deferential when it came to the legacy code I'd documented. "Why didn't you bring this up earlier?" he asked during a coffee break, both of us bleary-eyed from hours of debugging. I gave him a pointed look. "Would you have listened?" He had the grace to look embarrassed. "Probably not," he admitted. "I've been difficult." "That's one word for it," I replied, but without the anger I'd been carrying for months. Something about the crisis had broken down the wall between us, at least temporarily. We worked through the night, and by dawn the system was back online. As the team dispersed to catch a few hours of sleep before returning, Marcus caught my arm. "Laura, I owe you an apology," he said, his voice rough from exhaustion. "And probably more than one." I nodded, too tired for a deeper conversation. "We can talk about it later. Right now, I need sleep." As I drove home through the quiet morning streets, I wondered if this was a turning point or just a momentary truce born from necessity. Either way, something had changed. For the first time since joining Meridian, I felt like I had found my footing. The crisis created a strange new dynamic between Marcus and me. Where he had once looked through me, he now sought me out. Team meetings became collaborative rather than combative, and I found my ideas not only heard but implemented. The rest of the team noticed the shift too, exchanging glances whenever Marcus specifically asked for my input. "What did you do to him?" Tara asked one day over lunch in the company cafeteria. "It's like someone performed an exorcism." I laughed, stabbing at my salad. "Crisis bonding, I guess. Nothing like a system failure to make people appreciate each other." "Well, whatever it is, keep it up. The team's running smoother than it has in months." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Though between us, I'm pretty sure he had a thing for you from the start. Some boys just never outgrow the pigtail-pulling phase." I nearly choked on my water. "That's ridiculous. He barely acknowledged my existence until I saved his project." Tara just smirked. "If you say so." I dismissed her theory, but found myself more aware of Marcus in the days that followed. The way he'd lean against my desk during discussions, how his eyes would linger on mine when we spoke, the small smile that appeared when I entered a room. Had I been so focused on his dismissiveness that I'd missed something else entirely? 2 weeks after the system crash, Marcus stopped by my desk late on a Friday. "The team's heading to Murphy's to celebrate getting the Dixon contract," he said, hands in his pockets. "You should come. You're a big reason we landed it." I hesitated, remembering all the previous invitations I'd declined. "I don't know." "Please," he said, surprising me with his directness. It would mean a lot to have the whole team there. There was something vulnerable in his expression that I hadn't seen before. I nodded. "Okay, I'll stop by." Murphy's was packed with the after-work crowd, but our team had claimed a large booth in the back. I slid in beside Tara, acutely aware of Marcus watching me from across the table. A few drinks in, the conversation flowed easily, and I found myself laughing more than I had in months. "So, Laura," Damon called out over the noise, "you never told us where you worked before Meridian." "FinCore Systems in Boston," I replied. "I was there for about 5 years after grad school." Marcus's head snapped up. "You worked at FinCore? On the Artemis platform?" I nodded, surprised by his intensity. "I was part of the core development team." "Why?" He shook his head, a mixture of disbelief and amusement on his face. "I interviewed there 3 times before I ended up at Meridian. Never made it past the final round." "You're kidding." The revelation that Marcus had been rejected by my former employer shifted something in my perception of him. Their loss, clearly. Maybe. He held my gaze across the table. But it worked out for the best. The evening stretched on, and as people began to leave, I found myself sitting next to Marcus, the two of us tucked into a corner of the booth. "I really am sorry for how I treated you when you first joined," he said, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "It wasn't about you." "What was it about then?" I asked, genuinely curious now. He rotated his beer glass slowly. "I was supposed to get your position. Had been promised it, actually. When they brought you in instead," he shrugged. "I took it personally." "That explains a lot," I said, thinking back to his coldness in those first few months. though it doesn't excuse it. I know. He looked up at me, his expression serious. I was wrong. Not just professionally, but he hesitated. I missed out on getting to know someone pretty remarkable. The compliment caught me off guard, warming my face. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed with an incoming call. He checked the screen and grimaced. I have to take this. It's my sister. She's going through a rough time. He stood up. Don't leave yet? I nodded, watching as he stepped outside to take the call. Tara slid back into the booth, eyebrows raised suggestively. Told you, she said with a grin. It's not like that, I protested. But I wasn't entirely convinced anymore. Marcus didn't return for nearly 20 minutes. And when he did, his expression had changed completely. Everything okay? I asked as he sat down. Not really. My sister's having some issues with her ex. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I should probably head out. Of course. I gathered my things, surprisingly disappointed that the evening was ending. Outside the bar, we stood awkwardly on the sidewalk. The September air was crisp, carrying the first hints of fall. Can I walk you to your car? He offered. I took an Uber, I explained. My apartment's just a few blocks away. I'll walk you home then, he said decisively. When I started to protest, he added, Please. It would make me feel better after bailing on our conversation. We walked in comfortable silence for a block before he spoke again. There's something I've been wanting to ask you, he said, hands in his pockets. We're launching the new security protocol next month, and I'm putting together a specialized team to handle the integration. I'd like you to lead it. I stopped walking. Lead it? What about Damon or Priya? They've been here longer. They're great developers, but they don't have your systems architecture background, or your ability to see connections others miss. He turned to face me. You were made for this project, Laura. The offer was flattering, but I couldn't help wondering if this was just gratitude for saving the system during the crash. Is this because of the legacy code thing? Partly, he admitted. But it's more than that. I've watched you work these past few weeks. The way you think, how you solve problems, it's exactly what this project needs. I studied his face, looking for any sign of insincerity, but found none. I'll think about it. He nodded, seemingly satisfied with that answer. We resumed walking, and when we reached my building, he looked up at it with interest. Nice place. I'm over on 4th in that new high-rise. With the rooftop garden? I looked at those when I first moved here. You should come see it sometime, he said, and then quickly added, the view of the Sound is incredible. The invitation hung between us, laden with possibilities neither of us was ready to address. Instead, I stepped toward the entrance. Thanks for walking me home. Thanks for coming out tonight, he countered, a small smile playing at his lips. See you Monday? See you Monday, I confirmed, feeling like something significant had shifted yet again. As I rode the elevator up to my apartment, I thought about how differently things had unfolded than I'd expected when I first discovered that hidden code repository. From being invisible to being offered a leadership role, all because I'd stayed late one Friday night and followed my curiosity. I wondered what other discoveries were waiting to be made. In the code, in my career, and perhaps even with Marcus Wilson. The security protocol project dominated the next few weeks of my life. After accepting the leadership role, I assembled a small team, including Tara and 2 developers from another department. Marcus gave me full autonomy, though he remained closely involved, joining our daily stand-ups and often working late alongside us. It was during one of these late nights that I truly began to understand him. We were alone in the office, surrounded by whiteboards covered in flowcharts and system diagrams. I was struggling with a particularly complex integration issue, and my frustration was mounting. Maybe we should call it a night, Marcus suggested, watching me pace in front of the whiteboard. Fresh eyes tomorrow. I can't let it go, I admitted. It's like having an itch I can't scratch. He laughed softly. I know exactly what you mean. It's why I keep getting into trouble with upper management for missing deadlines. I can't move on until something's right. I stopped pacing and looked at him. Is that why you were so hard on me when I started? You thought I wouldn't get it right? He considered this for a moment. Maybe. Or maybe I recognized a kindred spirit and it scared me. He stood up and approached the whiteboard. Have you considered that the problem isn't in the integration layer, but in how we're initializing the security context? We worked side by side for another hour, and when we finally solved the issue, the triumph I felt was magnified by sharing it with someone who understood the obsessive satisfaction of cracking a difficult problem. Without thinking, I threw my arms around him in celebration. He stiffened momentarily before returning the hug, his hands warm against my back. When we pulled apart, there was a charged moment where neither of us moved. His eyes dropped to my lips, and I found myself wondering what would happen if I closed the distance between us. Instead, my phone buzzed with a text from Tara, breaking the spell. We should probably head home, I said, stepping back. He nodded, clearing his throat. Right. Big day tomorrow. The almost moment hung between us in the following days, unacknowledged but not forgotten. We fell into a comfortable working rhythm, and I found myself looking forward to our interactions. The way he'd bring me coffee in the morning, black, no sugar, exactly how I liked it, or how he'd instinctively understand my shorthand notes on code reviews. A week before the security protocol launch, disaster struck again. A routine penetration test revealed a critical vulnerability in our system, one that could potentially expose client financial data. The team gathered in the war room, the atmosphere tense as we assessed the damage. How bad is it? Marcus asked, his expression grim. Bad, I confirmed, pointing to the test results on the screen. The pen testers were able to access encrypted transaction data through a backdoor in the API gateway. How the hell did we miss this? His frustration was palpable, but unlike before, it wasn't directed at anyone specifically. I pulled up the codebase on my laptop. It looks like an incompatibility between the new protocol and some legacy middleware. The system is trying to maintain backward compatibility, but it's creating an unintended access point. Marcus paced the room, all eyes on him. How long to fix it? I ran the calculations in my head. 3 days, minimum. We'll need to rewrite portions of the middleware and run a complete security audit. We don't have 3 days, he said, his voice tight. The board presentation is tomorrow and the launch is scheduled for next week. Pushing it back would cost us the Westfield contract. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what was at stake, not just the contract, but potentially our jobs if this went sideways. What if we implement a temporary patch? Suggested Damon. Something to close the vulnerability until we can do a proper fix after launch. Marcus looked to me for my opinion, a deference that still felt new. It's risky, I said honestly. A patch might hold, but if it fails during production, we'd be exposing client data. That's not a risk I'm comfortable taking. He nodded, processing this. What's the alternative? I took a deep breath. We work through the night, all of us. We prioritize fixing the core vulnerability, delay the peripheral features if necessary, and run continuous testing until we're confident it's secure. That's asking a lot, Marcus said, looking around at the team, especially with no guarantee of success. I know, I acknowledged, but I'd rather ask for one night of extraordinary effort than risk our client's trust. The room was quiet as everyone considered what this meant. A sleepless night, intense pressure, no certainty of success. Then Tara spoke up. I'm in. Laura hasn't steered us wrong yet. One by one, the others agreed. Marcus watched me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Pride, perhaps, or something deeper. All right, he said finally. Let's do this. I'll order food and let the executive team know we're handling it. He paused. Laura's in charge. Whatever she needs, make it happen. The night that followed was a blur of code, coffee, and collaboration. We worked in pairs, rotating through different components of the system. Marcus and I tackled the most complex part, rebuilding the middleware interface that connected to the legacy systems. Around 3 a.m., when most of the team was running on fumes and caffeine, I hit a wall. The solution I'd been working on kept failing in testing, and frustration clouded my thinking. Take a break, Marcus said. gently pulling me away from my desk. "Just 5 minutes." He led me to the small kitchen area, away from the others. As he made fresh coffee, I leaned against the counter, exhaustion making my limbs heavy. "What if we can't fix it?" I asked quietly, voicing the fear that had been growing as the night wore on. "Then we delay the launch and take the hit," he said simply. "But we won't let vulnerable code go into production. That's not who we are." The "we" caught my attention. Not just the company, but the two of us. Somewhere along the way, we'd become a unit, aligned in our principles despite our rocky start. "When did you become the voice of reason?" I asked, a small smile breaking through my fatigue. "Around the time you became the fearless leader," he replied, handing me a steaming mug. His fingers brushed mine, lingering for a moment longer than necessary. "For what it's worth, I believe in you. The team does too." Something about his confidence in me, combined with the late hour and the intensity of our situation, broke down my last reservations. I set down the coffee and looked at him directly. "Why did you really give me the lead on this project?" He held my gaze, all pretense gone. "Because you're brilliant. Because you care about doing things right, not just doing them quickly. Because watching you work makes me want to be better." He paused. "And because I've been trying to find ways to be around you more." The admission hung in the air between us. Before I could respond, Tara burst into the kitchen. "I think we found something. The authentication handshake is failing because of a timestamp mismatch." The moment broken, we hurried back to the main room. For the next 2 hours, we chased down the timestamp issue, rebuilding the authentication sequence from scratch. As dawn broke, we ran the final tests. Everyone gathered around my screen as the security audit completed. "It passed," I announced, relief and disbelief mingling in my voice. "All vulnerabilities patched, all tests green." The room erupted in tired cheers. Tara hugged me, Damon collapsed dramatically into a chair, and the rest of the team exchanged exhausted high fives. Through it all, Marcus watched me, a mixture of admiration and something else in his eyes. As the team dispersed to catch a few hours of sleep before the board presentation, he approached me. "You did it?" he said softly. I shook my head. "We did it. All of us. But they followed you." He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear with a gentleness that made my heart race despite my exhaustion. "Go home. Get some sleep. I'll handle the board." "But the presentation." "I've got it covered. You've done enough." His hand lingered near my face. "We'll talk later, okay?" I nodded, too tired to argue and strangely affected by his touch. As I gathered my things to leave, I realized how completely my relationship with Marcus had transformed in such a short time. From being ignored to being trusted, from antagonism to whatever this new feeling was between us. The board presentation went perfectly, according to the texts I received from the team. The security protocol launched on schedule the following week, with no issues. The Westfield contract was secured, and our team was praised for our exceptional work under pressure. But the conversation Marcus and I had started in the kitchen at 3 a.m. remained unfinished, both of us caught up in the whirlwind of the launch and its aftermath. Sometimes I'd catch him looking at me across the office, or he'd find reasons to stop by my desk, but we never quite found our way back to that moment of honesty. Until the night of the launch celebration, when everything changed again. The company rented out the entire rooftop bar of the Grand Hotel for the launch celebration. Seattle spread out below us, a glittering tapestry of lights against the dark water of the Sound. Everyone was in high spirits, riding the wave of our successful launch and the praise that had been flowing from clients and executives alike. I wore a deep blue dress I'd bought on impulse that afternoon, feeling simultaneously excited and nervous about seeing Marcus outside of work again. We'd been circling each other for days, our interactions charged with unspoken possibilities. "You clean up nice," Tara said, handing me a glass of champagne as I arrived. "Someone's going to notice." "Shut up," I laughed, but my eyes immediately scanned the crowd for him. I found him near the edge of the rooftop, deep in conversation with our CEO. He was wearing a charcoal suit that fit him perfectly, his usual casual confidence amplified in the formal setting. As if sensing my gaze, he looked up, his eyes finding mine across the crowded space. He smiled, a small, private gesture meant only for me, before returning his attention to the conversation. The evening progressed with speeches and toasts, celebrating the team's achievement. When it was Marcus's turn to speak, he surprised everyone by calling me up to join him. "This launch wouldn't have happened without Laura Chen," he said to the gathered crowd, his hand warm on my back as I stood beside him. "Her leadership, technical brilliance, and refusal to compromise on security saved not just this project, but potentially the company's reputation. I've learned more working with her these past few weeks than in years of management training." The praise was unexpected and overwhelming. As applause filled the rooftop, he leaned close to whisper, "I meant every word." Later, as the formal part of the evening gave way to music and mingling, I found myself by the railing, taking in the view and processing everything that had happened in the past months. From feeling invisible to standing beside the project lead receiving accolades, it was a transformation I couldn't have imagined when I first discovered that hidden code repository. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Marcus's voice came from behind me. He joined me at the railing, our shoulders nearly touching. "Though not the most beautiful view here tonight." I turned to him, raising an eyebrow. "That was almost smooth." He laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "I'm out of practice. It's been a while since I tried to impress someone I actually care about." The directness of his statement caught me off guard. "Is that what you're doing? Trying to impress me? Is it working?" His eyes held mine, the playfulness in them mixed with something more serious. "Maybe," I admitted, feeling a smile tug at my lips. "Though the bar's pretty high after that speech." He moved closer, until our arms were touching. "Laura, there's something I need to tell you." My heart quickened. "What's that?" "I've been offered a position at Techverse, Senior Director of Development." Not what I was expecting. "Oh, that's... Congratulations. When do you start?" "I haven't accepted yet," he said, watching me carefully. "It would mean moving to Austin." "Texas is nice," I said automatically, trying to process what this meant. Just when things were shifting between us, he was considering leaving. "It is," he agreed. "But Seattle has certain advantages." His eyes never left mine, making his meaning clear. "Like rainy weather and expensive coffee?" I deflected, suddenly unsure. "Like brilliant developers who see solutions no one else can find." He turned to face me fully. "Like you." The air between us seemed to still. "Are you saying you'd turn down a senior director position because of me? We barely know each other outside of work." "I know enough," he said simply. "I know how you think, how you lead, how you never give up on a problem. I know you stay late because you love the work, not because you're trying to prove something. I know your coffee order and that you hum when you're deep in code. I know that working with you has made me better, not just as a developer, but as a person." His honesty left me speechless. Before I could respond, he continued, "I'm not asking you for anything. I just wanted you to know that you're a factor in my decision, an important one." I took a deep breath, gathering my courage. "And if I told you I'd like to see where this could go? Between us?" The hope that flashed across his face was almost painful to see. "Then I'd definitely have something to consider. Or," I said carefully, "you could stay, and we could find out together." He reached for my hand, intertwining our fingers. "I'd like that." We stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of possibility between us. Then a thought occurred to me, and I couldn't help but laugh. "What?" he asked, curious. "Just thinking about how this all started. If I hadn't found that hidden code repository, if the system hadn't crashed..." I shook my head. "We might still be avoiding each other." "I was an idiot," he admitted. "But in my defense, you're pretty intimidating." "Me?" I was genuinely surprised. "Absolutely. Your resume, your skills, the way you can look at a problem and see solutions no one else can." He squeezed my hand. It scared the hell out of me. Still does, a little. "Good," I said, leaning slightly into him. A little fear keeps things interesting. The party continued around us, but we remained in our own world by the railing, talking about everything and nothing: past projects, favorite coding languages, places we wanted to travel. When the night grew chilly, he slipped his jacket around my shoulders, the gesture so natural it felt like we'd done this 100 times before. As the celebration wound down, he offered to share a ride home. Standing outside my building, I handed back his jacket, suddenly shy despite the hours of easy conversation. "So," he said, his eyes bright in the streetlight, "what happens next?" I considered the question. 3 months ago, I was the invisible new developer, and he was the project lead who couldn't be bothered to learn my name. Now, everything had changed. All because I'd stayed late one Friday night and followed my curiosity into the depths of our code base. Dinner? I decided. Tomorrow night. A proper date, away from code and crises. His smile was immediate and genuine. "I know just the place." As he leaned in, I met him halfway, our first kiss as inevitable as the solution to a well-structured algorithm. When we broke apart, I couldn't help but laugh at the wonder of it all. "What?" he asked, still holding me close. "Just thinking that I should send a thank you note to whoever wrote that hidden code repository," I said. "It changed everything." "Not the code," he corrected gently. You changed everything." As I watched him walk back to the waiting car, I reflected on the strange path that had led us here. Sometimes the most important discoveries aren't in the code we write, but in the connections we make when we stop looking past each other and start looking directly at what's been there all along.